Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and in this video I'm going to be showing the fastest fully upgraded Sports Classics cars around the circuit and the best cars to use for races. For the full story about what I did, check the annotation on the screen or the link in the description for the intro video, but otherwise let's get straight into it. So in last place for the Sports Classics is the Tornado. The Tornado is the 11th best Sports Classic and right at the bottom, and that's because it just really doesn't have a lot of pace. You know, it's one of the slowest cars in the game, fully upgraded, and with a 1 minute 26.5, you know, that's way off the pace of everything in the game. And that's the same for really the bottom 3 Sports Classics cars. Now, they do have a lot of modifications, and it would be interesting if we were able to race them together because they are quite close. So just ahead of the Tornado in 10th place is the Peyote, which gets a lap time of 1 minute 25.307. So again, you know, it's not that much further forward than the Tornado, and it would be really interesting in my opinion to be able to race these. Obviously you can race them if you're sort of organised with a group of people, but in terms of regular racing, the bottom 3 cars in this class are going to be off the pace and aren't going to win you any races. But they are interesting cars to drive. So in 9th place we've got the Manana, which gets a lap time just 1 second ahead of what we've just seen with a 1 minute 24.4. So again, you know, we've seen sort of a second increase from each of the 3 cars here. They're interesting cars to drive, you know, they feel reasonably okay to drive. They just lack a little bit of power, which really allows them to get a quick lap time. But they've got a lot of modifications. They are interesting cars in themselves. They're not really meant for racing, but it would be interesting to use them in a race anyway. So in 8th place is the Roosevelt. Now the Roosevelt is kind of in the middle on its own really. It's kind of the same distance away from the top car as it is from the bottom. So with a 1 minute 17.8, it's obviously a good amount quicker than what we've just seen from the 3 bottom cars, and it would certainly beat those quite easily. But compared to the cars at the top of the class, it's still quite far off the pace. Obviously it's a nice car if you have it, but obviously most of us who didn't buy it initially still won't have it. So it's an interesting car, but it's not going to be competitive. So in 7th place is the Stinger. Now the Stinger is a beautiful car to drive. It can be quite tricky from time to time, but once you get it down and once you get the hang of it, it's very nicely balanced. It's just a wonderful car to drive. And with a 1 minute 14.1, that's around 4 seconds now slower than the top car. So although it's reasonably far off the pace, it's probably the first car that you can use in a race and still be reasonably okay. So in 6th place, just ahead of it, is the Stinger GT. Now the Stinger GT gets a lap time that's only 4 thousandths of a second quicker than the regular Stinger. And that's because underneath the hood they are exactly the same car apart from a few suspension differences. So apart from a few tiny differences in the way the suspension works, the Stinger GT and the regular Stinger are exactly the same. They have the same power, gears, traction, everything about them is exactly the same. So it doesn't matter which one you use, you will get the same lap time. So in 5th place is the JB700. Now that was a bit of a surprise that it got this high, but when it's fully modified, it actually feels quite good. It's got good power, it feels quite good around the corners as well. In general, it's quite a nicely balanced car to drive, and certainly it doesn't feel it when it isn't modified, but it certainly gains a little bit more from the modifications than other cars do in this class. And with a 1 minute 13.3, that's about a second quicker than what we just saw from the Stingers. So in 4th place, just ahead of it, is the Monroe. Now pretty much all of the cars in this class don't get a spoiler. Now spoilers increase traction now, and with a 1 minute 12.4, the Monroe is again another second ahead of what we've just seen from the JB700. Now if the Monroe had a spoiler, I really think it would be challenging the top spots. The only problem with it is that it lacks that cornering speed, that traction around the corners that can really elevate it up into those top positions. But it is still quite competitive, just like our 3rd place car, the Coquette Classic. Again, the Coquette Classic is about another second ahead of what we've just seen from the Monroe, so it's been consistent gaps between the cars all the way through. And the Coquette Classic has a tendency to step out, so it oversteers quite a bit. You have to be careful when applying the accelerator, but once you get it down, it can be a quick car, it can be on the pace. But overall it is going to be just behind the top 2 in the class. Again, a spoiler would probably help it with that traction in the corners, but it doesn't have one. So it's reasonably quick, but it will just sort of lack that overall speed around the corners that will allow you to get those top times. So in second place we have the Pigalle. Now the Pigalle is basically the complete polar opposite of the car that we have in first place. So the Pigalle gets a 1 minute 10.6, so again that's another second taken out of what we've just seen, and it's pretty much been consistent gaps all the way through from the Stinger GT to the Pigalle. Now, the best thing about this car is that it does get a spoiler option in Los Santos Customs, and that gives it that extra traction around the corners. It has good acceleration. It's also a front wheel drive as well, you need to be aware of that in the corners. But it does have good acceleration out of the corners, and it's got excellent traction around the corners as well. And it will certainly, the more corners that are in the track, the better it will do. However, our overall best car in the class is of course the Z-Type, or the Z-Type if you are American. Now the Z-Type's main strength is straight line speed. It's the polar opposite of the Pigalle. The Pigalle's weakness was straight line speed, the Z-Type's weakness is cornering ability, so it can't go around the corners as quick as the Pigalle can. But it has much higher straight line speed. It's got great top speed as well, rivaling that of the Adder. So as long as the track has enough straights to utilise the straight line speed of the Z-Type, it isn't so bad in the corners that it won't be able to keep up. So with a 1 minute 10.2, obviously it's only 0.4 of a second difference between this and the Pigalle. Overall, on most tracks, the Z-Type is going to be the quicker. But obviously the Pigalle is much better on tighter tracks with a lot more corners, and it's certainly the cheaper option of the two. So if you're looking for a competitive sports classic car on a budget, the Pigalle will be your best option, and it will easily be able to compete with the Z-Type, obviously depending on tracks. Now if the track has just a load of long straights and it's something like Long Haul or something like that, the Z-Type will dominate pretty much anything. But otherwise, on the majority of tracks, the Pigalle can compete if you can drive it well enough. So there you go guys, those are the best sports classic cars in the entire game. Let me know down below what you thought about this. Which cars do you use in particular for sports classic races? And do you have any of the others that aren't necessarily competitive as well? So thanks a lot for watching everyone. If you want to be notified of future episodes in this series, be sure to click subscribe, and you can also check out future episodes by clicking the playlist link down below. Thanks a lot for watching. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.